As the real estate crowdfunding world grows exponentially ever bigger, my guest today, Lance Peterson, Managing Director of Verivest, has identified a need investors have and has filled it with a powerful solution that you're going to hear all about in today's episode. Hello, Adam Gower here, and the angle that Lance at Verivest has taken to facilitating real estate investing in the age of crowdfunding is to identify that the number one most important component of making an investment is trust. Most specifically, trust in the sponsor, the person you are sending your money to as an investor. How do you know that what they are telling you is true? What about ongoing performance once a company has taken your money to invest in a deal? How do investors rest assured once their wires have gone through to a sponsor that all is moving along as planned? Lance explains all today, as you will hear. But more than being just one of the best service providers in the industry, adding value by providing the kind of comfort to investors that you could only otherwise have with a sponsor if you'd known them all your life, Lance also shares with me some of the exact same thinking as it relates to the growth of the real estate crowdfunding industry overall. You will likely hear me talking about the benefits of anonymity when an investor looks at a deal. You don't have to meet with a sponsor or show yourself to be interested in what they're doing at any time. You can just research them and make your decision to invest completely hidden from view, completely anonymously. Isn't that wonderful? No more 2-hour pitches from sponsors. Well, I've been talking about this for years, but never before used the term anonymity in describing it. So I officially grant Lance full credit for that, even if I don't give him the byline when I use the term again. Thank you, Lance. You can find out more about Lance and Verivest on the podcast page for today's episode at gowercrowd.com. Be sure to subscribe to the free Gower Crowd newsletter. It's the only media source anywhere that focuses exclusively on real estate crowdfunding for both passive investors and professional real estate veterans, and it includes everything you possibly want to know about the industry. Sign up there at gowercrowd.com. Now, it is my great pleasure to introduce you to Lance Peterson, Managing Partner at Verivest, who's going to tell you who you really can trust. Here he is. Lance, super good seeing you. Thanks so much for joining me today on the podcast. I've got one high-level question for you. I'm fascinated by what Verivest is doing. Tell me where you see yourself fitting in the commercial real estate capital formation industry. And I'm trying hard not to say crowdfunding. That's what I really want to say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think for us, the way we look at it is, we're trying to build, the operating system for, your real estate deal sponsor, right? Who's predominantly raising money from high net worth investors. So for us, we just see that the market is just growing leaps and bounds, as you know, right? The total addressable market just for people getting in that are, becoming GPs on deals is just exploding. So for us, we just feel like there's so much room, right? So, but for us, we really want to try to make it as turnkey as possible, help these guys be discovered, help validate them, take all these administrative things off their plate and accounting sort of functions and tax, and just make it sort of where you can, plug in and go. And one of my admirations, is sort of what AngelList has done in really that sort of, the VC space, for the non-Sand Hill Road sort of venture capitalists, your boutique VCs and, through their syndicates program. So we're trying to do, much of the same here in the real estate realm.
All right. So describe how you're doing that. When you talk about new sponsors or I forgot the term you used. Actually, you use new develop GPs, new GPs coming into the industry. So how do you help them? What is your value prop to them?
Yeah, I mean, I think the value prop, right, is that if you're going to be a GP, that means that you're going to probably syndicate a deal, as you know, right? And so, you need to put together the entity, right, to form that entity. We make that easier for them, and then boarding that deal onto our platform so they can hit the ground running, to do their fundraise. And then having, once again, some resources on our team that can help, that onboarding process, the accreditation verification. I know you're super bullish on the 506C stuff. as are we. So that's really how we help them. It's just we lower that barrier to entry, kind of what like what Amazon Web Services did for your high tech startup in the early 2000s. You think about the barrier to entry to start a high tech startup. You had to buy servers, and you needed co-location facilities, and you need all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, AWS comes out, and you can turn up, computing power in less than 5 seconds on demand. So for us, I just view it the same way. Is just remove all that friction and the barrier and just make it easier to get going. If you found a good deal and you've underwritten it and you're able to negotiate it, and, let's just take a lot of the other stuff off of the plate and just make it, easy to get going.
Okay. So we need a blank canvas, right? You know what you do extremely well.
Yeah.
But assume that somebody doesn't have any clue at all, like zero clue. I know all the different pieces that you've got that you put together, but for somebody who's listening that really doesn't know what you guys do and how you can, I'm going to quote back at you, how you can help them hit the ground running to do their fundraise. How do you do that? What are you offering to sponsors?
Yeah, I think that, the first thing we sort of offer, no matter how, if we're just getting started or you're going, I think it's just sort of that consultation around, okay, great, you found a deal, and you need $3 million, right, in equity capital, and you've listened to Adam tell you that you should syndicate this, and you've read his book, Syndicate, and you've read Unleashed, and you're like, I want to do this, right?
Thanks for the plug. That was a good.
Yeah, but it's true, right? That's basically everything you sort of talk about. It's like it's the same thing. So for us, you come to us, we're going to help you get those legal docs put together, right? So you've got a PPM, and you've got an operating agreement, and you've got your subscription booklet. Those are the things that investors are going to have to read and sign in order to invest. We've got an investor portal so that you can put that up, where you can upload those offering materials. And, and then it's really, driving, whether you're raising it sort of from people you don't know, or it's your friends and family, you still need to get the word out, right? So you need to send communications to those investors, letting them know that there's an opportunity, and you need to drive them someplace so that they can indicate interest, right? Like, hey, I'm in 50 grand, and if you've done a really good job, right, you might fill up that whole $3 million in no time flat, right? So you need to sort of manage, okay, great. I need to, certain people just can't get in, maybe next time you can get in. So our system sort of handles all of those things. So that's what we do, is this combination of the software really and the people, right? In this case, like accountants and bookkeepers, and we've got tax people and investor relations and compliance people that handle a lot of those things that, really don't necessarily have anything to do specifically with sort of real estate or asset management, but you certainly, as to keep yourself out of trouble, you need to make sure that you're sort of complying with all the regulations and those things. So that's really what we do at Verivest is a little bit more, help on all those fronts and guide you through that process. That's what we do.
That's really interesting. We'll talk about the investor facing stuff as well. So what you've described in a moment, but what you've described, correct me if I'm wrong in saying this, but the more I see your emails and your marketing, etc., the more it feels like you are evolving into being a crowdfunding platform. Do you see yourself that way?
Yeah, I think to some degree we do. I guess my spin on it, right, is that, it's crowdfunding in the sense that, we're trying to help you build relationships with people you didn't already know, and that might not be anywhere near you. And, you're putting an offering out, available to the public that they can, invest in. We certainly want to encourage more people to do that. But more than anything, I think it's just it's the notion of matching people, right? Like it's our clients they're not Blackstone, and they're not even the largest private equity real estate firms. That's what I mean. Like these are not household brand names, but these are people who, are deal guys or deal gals who know how to find a good deal, but they just need to build more relationships at scale, right? So for me, I think the term crowdfunding is sort of loaded. So that's what we're trying to do. Is I just realized that, if you really want to build a business and grow and scale it, your constraints going to probably become the amount of capital you can gain access to, because our own personal networks are only so big, right? So your friends, family, and relatives is going to get you so far. But what about that next layer, right? So how do you get the friends, family, and relatives to tell other people about you? And then how do you get these, complete strangers to trust you, and believe in what you're doing? And so, as the Verivest, really rebrand for us was all about that, was just realizing how much friction there is, when you have somebody who's an accredited investor looking at a new deal sponsor who might have a syndication to invest in, is that they're wondering, who are you? I mean, are you a crook or a criminal? I mean, I can't tell, right? And then, are these claims you're making about all these great stuff you've done and these returns that you've attained and achieved? How do I know if they're legitimate? Well, they don't, right? And so for us, we run background checks on our clients. We call them members of the network. We verify their track records, put it on the public profile, and we're trying to help really promote the sponsor first and foremost, knowing that for most people who don't know you, they're just trying to figure out, can I trust you first and foremost? To the degree that they get comfortable with who you are, what your strategy is, the things that you've done in your track record, I think then is where we're trying to say, once you get there, investors, now you're in a position where, as an LP or a passive investor, you should do all that stuff. That's due diligence first and foremost before you start looking at individual deals.
Right.
So for us, it's like, I think that's a bit where we're different, is that we focus on the sponsor first, the deal second. And then what we don't do, right, is that we're not promoting deals. I'm not trying to go and sell your offering to investors. That's your job, right? You know the deal better than anyone else, deal sponsor. And, so we're trying to, create a forum for your deal to be posted and listed. And it's up to you to sort of sell the offering, and we'll help you do the rest. I mean, the other thing too, is, being in the biz, right, is we got to be careful. We certainly don't want to be in a position where we're considered or doing, broker dealer sort of activity. Because if we did that, it would completely change the nature of our business, right? We would have to constrain the amount of people we can work with and help, and really curate it down to, very few opportunities where, I want to be more inclusive, help as much as we can, but really not be in a position where we're making money when people decide to allocate capital, on a commission basis or any basis for that matter. We'd rather touch as many of the other things as we can.
Yeah, but that's a really complicated area to get into, of course. So with the securities aspect, let's leave that to one side. Otherwise, we go down some pretty deep rabbit holes with that. But I did have a question specifically. So the typical model for crowdfunding platforms, right, that provide similar services, right? We'll get a page, you can pitch your deal, we'll get it out there in front of investors, we'll help you with documentation, I don't know to what extent, etc., etc. I'm thinking of, the kind of the big ones, Real Crowd, CrowdStreet, Realty Mogul, and some others, Equity Multiple, of course.
Yeah.
But what they do, their value proposition to investors is, we've underwritten the deal and the sponsor, and we like it. So we've allowed it on our platform with a huge, raft of CYAs, don't trust anything we tell you underneath. But basically the value prop is, we've underwritten these deals.
Yes.
Yours is different, isn't it? Your extra layer is, come look at these deals, but and we've really done a deep dive on this sponsor, so you can trust the sponsor, make your own decision on the deal. Is that basically the angle you're taking?
Yeah, I mean, to clarify a bit further, right, is that, like you said, the other platforms that you mentioned, are vetting the deal and they're passing judgment. We believe it's a good deal, yes or no. If yes, then you can list. If no, you can't. What we've done that's a bit different is that we don't pass judgment on the deal, but what we require people who do list offerings that are accessible on our platform to the public is that we require them to engage us to monitor that deal on an ongoing basis. Because my belief is that, there's risk involved in investing in these real estate deals. That's why you're able to generate double-digit returns. And what that means is that the deal, they may be unable to execute the business plan, and they might not attain the results that they were hoping for. But for me, I think the bigger risk oftentimes is that if the deal does go sideways, it's the decisions that many people make that make it worse, right? Like pulling and sucking money out of the deal, those sorts of things. So for me, I just believe that if we can if we're looking where all the money's going and ensuring that all the fees are being calculated correctly and that they're reporting on a quarterly basis, we're basically forcing them to face the music should this deal, not perform or begin to not perform, right? They've got some additional accountability. Whereas in the absence of us, just using one of the other platforms as an example, they could raise all the money for the deal. And then after the deal's done, the sponsor, if it starts to go sideways, will be completely dark. And the platform is just saying, not our problem, right? Whereas for us, we're more of like, hey, they listed it there. We're going to force them to do the right thing. It's not to say they won't stick their head in the sand and not do the right thing, but they're going to be doing that publicly. It's going to be a bit harder to sort of get away with it. So for me, it's like what happens post-investment is just sort of the thing that's been overlooked, in my opinion, because that's where when you look at deals that have failed, that's usually when all the bad stuff.
Exactly, that's right. Yeah, gosh, Lance, I have to tell you, this is such a tremendously exciting industry to be a part of. To have guys like you figuring out pathways through this incredible opportunity and testing ideas. I really love it. So one of the things that so you do the background testing, you review somebody before. Actually, they can be on your platform, but you give them a stamp of the Verivest stamp, right? The right to use it if they go through a certain degree of monitoring and background checks, etc. And the idea of that is to give confidence to investors. But you also taught about driving traffic. So the value prop to sponsors is we will also drive traffic, right? We'll help you find. So what have you found works the best for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a similar playbook that, much of the stuff you talk about in your books, Adam, right? It's what we do is we start with, educational content, lead magnets, things that help the investors along their journey, right? Because they're trying to figure out, how do I do this? And once again, and we know that one of them it sounds very exciting, but for them, the big unknown is like, how do I conduct due diligence? Like, what is the appropriate, or, what process should I be following? Right. So that's really where we begin to kind of attract them in. And then once we get them there, it's all about helping them become better investors. Right. So it's like, because that's what we're all about. I want you to be a better, more savvy investor. Right. We can all get better. So that's really what we do to sort of drive traffic in. And of course, the value proposition of doing it safely, in an environment where all the people you're looking at have background checks, their track records verified, and, all their stuff's going to be monitored post-investment, I think just removes a lot of that friction. So, but yeah, I mean, we run the same playbooks that, like I said, that you profess in your books. It's this digital marketing playbooks. It's Facebook, it's Google, it's educational stuff, going out and get the word out.
You do webinars as well. I've noticed some webinars with sponsors, right? Here's sponsor X is presenting. Yeah, I think presenting this deal. So tell me about those. Have those people like those?
Oh yeah, they love them. Yeah, we do 2 webinars and sometimes 3 webinars a week. And, we'll bring on a member and they'll serve as sort of the guest educator, right? And they'll have a topic that they educate on, or they can pitch their deal, where they can run through their opportunity. But yeah, we really are trying to get as many of our sponsors sort of share their knowledge with our investor members. Right. Because they have a thirst for that. Once again, they want to become better investors. So, that's how I call it the know, like, trust, right? Like, we're helping them be known, right? Because we're driving traffic in. The like part, I don't really control that much, right? Like, I can't decide whether someone likes you or not, but we can help you, at least get an opportunity to be liked by sharing knowledge and information. And we know where that happens. Like, when you write your books, you become a fan. I read your books and I'm like, I like this guy. Right. I like the way he writes. I like how he views the world. He's a smart guy. Right. And that's liking, whereas if you didn't have the book, how would I know whether I can like you or not? Right. And then, the know, like, and then trust, of course, is the last leg, which we use all our verification and ongoing monitoring.
Right. Yeah, so that's a very cool box to check that you do, is that trust that trust box, because you never know. I mean, I get all these SEC news alerts, and people are committing fraud left and right. It's extraordinary. I'm sorry I signed up. It's kind of a grim email every day. Somebody else just got nailed for fraud, which means there's a lot of poor people out there that got nailed. But that's what you eliminate, right? That's, you do enough due diligence that they're not crooks.
That's, Adam, that's my passion, right? So, all the stuff we've talked about, I mean, you set it aside. For me, the mission and all the people that work at our company, it's to protect investors. So for me, it's what it's all about, is that it makes me sick that people, are being swindled when this is what we can do to sort of help, avoid that. There's plenty of good guys out there who do the right thing when no one's looking, even when we're looking over their shoulder. There's no reason to fall for some of these crazy schemes that people run. And I don't know, it's unfortunate, right? It's just sort of humanity.
But I'd say
it's a slippery slope. They woke up many days and they were good guys until one day they weren't. And then they started, doing the wrong thing. And I think that's what we protect against.
Yeah. I mean, there's no, look, you can do as much due diligence as you want on a sponsor and on a deal. But if, I don't want to get too grim in a podcast, but if they're a crook, they're criminal, there's nothing that you can do until they, until it's uncovered. I mean, there's nothing, because they're giving you false information, right? And how do you verify? But anyway, that's a whole different story. And that's why what you do is so important. Yeah. It's a layer that people don't think about, right? Has everything been checked? They're telling me they've got this history. They're telling me they did this, they did that, et cetera, et cetera. You only have their word for it. Right. Yeah. You can do bits of research online, but there's not that much anyway. It's essentially what you do. That's
what we do. Yeah. I mean, it's sort of and that's our pitch to sponsors. It's like, listen, you've got all these prospects and they're trying to find their way of checking their own boxes. So you're spinning all these cycles, having the same conversations over and over again with a bunch of people trying to get to the same end result. Are you trustworthy? Can I believe what you're saying? So for me, I'm just going, okay, I know that it's hard to get your mind wrapped around, but if you do it once with us on an ongoing basis, you're going to, the sales cycle from the time you meet somebody to them investing goes down. The amount they invest goes up. The chances that they tell their friends go up. It's all of those sales funnel metrics. Right. That's the numbers that need to move. Now, the trouble is when you're selling what we do to sponsors, is that they've never really thought of their fundraise as a sales cycle, a marketing funnel, and a sales cycle. So they're going, I don't even know what the numbers are. I just know that, every time I talk to some guy, they usually won't invest for like 12 months or 18 months. And I'm going, well, and we're starting to we've got anecdotal evidence, and we're starting to get empirical evidence that as I call it, shortcut the time to trust. I just believe that if you're on the Verivest and the Verivest sponsor network, those are the things that happen. And, it's a beautiful thing. It's more efficient. You spend your time doing what you like doing.
Lance, you and I are so living in the same world. That's the issue for sponsors. It's, we build these systems, as and our clients, before they come in, I always try to explain this to them clearly up front. But some folk, they'll come in and just expect to switch on the machine and money to start kind of pouring in through the ceiling, run around with a hat, collecting it. No, you still got to work. But you use the term that sales cycle is shortened. You still got to do work. But when you meet somebody for the first time, they are already way advanced in that sales cycle, right? The first question isn't, who are you? Where are you from? Yeah. The first question might be, can I send you paper documents, or can I use my IRA to invest? Well, it's like completely different qualitatively.
That's right. And that's what, that's exactly right. We want to pull them further, deeper into the funnel. And because the other thing that we've noticed, and once again, like I've walked a million miles in all of your shoes, right? Anyone who's a deal sponsor, we've already done it, right? Like, so we live this. And one of the things we've always noticed was really how much investors love to remain anonymous as long as humanly possible, right? And so really even when we went to conferences that had investors at them, we realized when we were at the booth, no one stopped. When we left our booth, they'd come and grab all our stuff off our table. And it was the damn thing.
Fascinating.
It's like, why do they do that? And when I talk to a lot of investors now, they say, listen, I'm looking at this one sponsor. Is there any way that you guys can just reach out and see if you can run them through the verification process? And I'm like, well, have you ever talked to them? He's like, no, I never talked to them. And I'd rather they not know who I am. I'd rather you do it first. I'm like, yeah, no problem. Who are they? Right. And we're just ringing them like, so it's just, they want to wait until, and it makes sense, right? Because we all fear the salesman. And you think about like used cars or the car sales these days. We do the same thing, don't we? We do all this research online. We show up at the lot and we're like, that's the one I want. Drop the paperwork. All to what? Avoid this interaction with the sales guy, right? I don't want him like call me every day, wondering where I'm, what I'm thinking. It's like, I want to show up and say,
I don't want to go into a haggle or anything like this. Exactly.
Yeah.
Lance, I am going to, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to give you byline credit. I might do at least the first few times, and I'm just going to completely adopt it as my own original thought. But this idea, I've been saying the same thing differently. Yeah. People don't want to sit in 2-hour pitch meetings. They don't want to do that. They want to learn entirely independently online who you are, what you're doing. They want to do it in their own time, on their own devices, in their own way. And then they'll come to you. But yeah, this idea that they want to remain anonymous, I'd never framed it quite that way. But that's exactly what it is, isn't it?
Exactly what it is. And I think that's why guys like you and I, we get so excited about this industry, because we see the shift, we see the change, right? Like, and I mean, let's face it, we say it out loud now, it's obvious, because every other industry has sort of gone through a similar transformation, right? But that's here now. Right. And so I don't want to hear it. That's what I mean. I cringe a bit with the crowdfunding stuff, whatever. I'm like, you're missing the boat. Like, I get it. We can call it that if we want to, but it's just realizing that buying behavior is changing and people's expectations and their savviness is increasing. So they want to be able to, and expect they should be able to go and get a bunch of information ahead of time without you knowing. And then they'll go ahead. And if you're worthy and you meet their criteria, you'll hear about it. Right. But to think that you're going to pull them in, like you said, in 2-hour pitch meetings and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
That's just not.
Sponsors don't want to do that either, though, Lance. Nobody wants to. I mean, I spent my entire career booking appointments to pitch people, and half of my life in meetings, trying to nurture people through in person, nurture them through the process. It's brain damage. It's just, there's no reason to be doing it like that anymore. Let me ask you this. What are the biggest challenges that you face at the moment? Is it finding developers and investors, and how do you do it?
So no, it's not. We have no problem finding prospective members or clients, right? What I always say is it's probably what it was like working at Carfax like 6 months after they launched the Carfax report. That's sort of what we're experiencing, right? Where it's like, great idea. I love that. The notion if I'm a used car sales lot, having Carfax, that sounds awesome. Would you like to buy? Would you like to have Carfax reports? Like, no, I'm good. Well, how come? Well, it's because no one's demanding it yet, right? And so I think for a lot of the people that we speak with that are sponsors, it's sort of like, we love the idea, but we're going to kind of sit and wait for this sort of thing to be forced to do it, right? Until investors begin to demand it, or in the case of Carfax, where used car buyers begin to demand that they have to have a Carfax before they buy their car, right? So there's that tipping point that you need to have. So for us, that's kind of where we're at, and why we put all
that's the developers. Sorry to cut you off. That's the developers pushback, is it?
The developers are the ones who push back. It's more of just an indifference, like, hey, I think it's great, but right now,
but who cares?
It's sort of like, that sounds, once again, because what I'm saying is it's some work for them, right? Like, they have to provide us information. We have to review it. It's not free. It's not super expensive, but it's still just, the time, effort, and energy.
Right.
It's not urgent, right? It's not urgent right now. And so I think that's been, the biggest challenge. And of course, one I expected to have happen. On the investor side, it's completely opposite. It's to a person, they just think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And so for us on that side, it's really trying to get the word out, for them to tell their friends, obviously for them to demand it, right? When they're looking at deals,
right?
Because that's the only way, right? Because investors love it, but I'm like, well, I need your help. Like you can't go and turn around and say it's a great idea, and then tomorrow go invest in a deal where the guys haven't gone through the process and they're not verified. So that's sort of where we're at. I mean, we just launched the director, this whole concept sort of, this piece of it was in February, right? So super.
Is that all? Gosh,
Yeah.
that's amazing. You're doing excuse me, I shouldn't use language like that.
Well,
That's amazing. It seems like you've come a long way very, very fast. It's very impressive. I tell you, when I see sponsors, I always wonder if they are Verivest certified.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why one of the strategies we've executed, right, is that every time we touch a net new sponsor that we've never heard of, we add an unclaimed profile to our directory, right? So we go scrape their website, add them, it's unclaimed, so that when investors are researching those sponsors, that page is going to show up in Google. It ranks page 1, most of them do, and then they can sort of see, well, hey, they're not verified, and in a few weeks, we're adding a button where investors can just click a button that says request verification.
Nice.
So
that's good.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And then it sends an email to the CEO.
That's right. So then it's like, hey, all these people are looking at your stuff and you're not verified. So that's some of the stuff that we're doing. But
so let me ask you this. Why, I'm kind of curious to know in what way you see crowdfunding, the term, as a loaded term, because I'm hanging my hat on it. And I do wonder sometimes, about the term. What's your perspective on that, on the term itself?
Yeah, well, I guess for me, I go back to okay, we talked about crowdsourcing things. Crowdsourcing sort of meant that the crowd was, collaborating together to make something, collectively to make it better, right? So when you crowd fund something, it means that, you sort of, I guess for me, the why it's loaded is because it sort of intimates that the group of people or the collective are the ones who decided this was a cause or whatever the thing was worthy enough to put some effort, energy, and money into. Whereas everyone that uses the term crowdfunding, that's not really what's happening, right? The people with the money are sort of just the blind sheep. They're just the ones who just sort of pile into deals because some middleman said it was good. I don't know. It just seems like
you just don't like the term at all, do you? But it's because the laws changed in 2012 that you and I have businesses today, right?
Yeah.
And if it weren't for Reg C and general solicitation,
I have no problem with it. It's more of I think for me, it's more of just trying to clarify to the deal sponsors that unlike those, if you can get onto CrowdStreet, once again, and I tell people, someone asked me this morning, I said, I have no problems with CrowdStreet. If you can get your deal approved by CrowdStreet and they'll raise all the money you need for the deal, and you're fine with the price that they charge to do it, and you're fine having that many investors in your deal, then you should do it, right? But I'm saying that's, they only take 3% of the deals they see. So I'm just saying, it's a solution. It's not the whole solution. And my whole contention is much like yours is that I believe that you should, although you can use that, you should get busy building new relationships online, right? So that you don't need to rely on CrowdStreet or anybody else. And, and that's sort of more of my stance on it.
Well, you can look at it from a different perspective as well. I think I was talking to Tor Steen, the, I guess, co-founder and CEO not long ago, and he said 5%, it's actually 5% that they take on. But what that means is that 95% don't. Right. Yeah. So what are you going to do? Are you just going to like this? Oh, well, nothing we can't get on CrowdStreet. So we're going to go home and,
no, that's not what they're going to
phone
do.
Calls again.
Yeah, that's right. You got it. So, I mean, to me, then it's for us, it's more of let's service the rest that are worthy of the remaining 95 to those that are worthy. They can pass a background check and verify their track records and have us monitor their deal. Then we'll do our best to help them be discovered and build net new relationships with investors. And if you want to call it crowdfunding, I have no problem with that, right? It's just real. And I guess that's my whole thing, is just trying to get the deal sponsors to realize there is no silver bullet. Yes, you might get on CrowdStreet and maybe you can have CrowdStreet raise all your money. Good for you, right? But it's just, there's a bunch of other stuff out there that, you got a bunch of other deals you need to have funded. You can't rely on that. You need to sort of build your own investor base. It's the lowest cost of capital. I mean, because that's the other thing. A lot of these guys think, well, institutional capital. I'm just trying to get to institutional capital. And I'm like, that's the most expensive money out there. Like you think you want institutional money until they offer it to you. Then you'll be like, no way. It's too expensive.
Well, it's not just the financial terms, actually. It's also the rights and responsibilities that are substantially different.
Yeah, that's right. So I think, like I said, I'm just like you. We call it crowdfunding, we call it whatever we want. I just think that this is the future and this is what you should be doing. And I'm telling everyone that's doing 506Bs, I'm like, you need to start migrating to just doing 506.
There's only one word that you can use with somebody that says they're doing a 506B. It's actually one word and one letter. Why? Like these days, like why?
You know what they always say, right? They say, well, I don't want to exclude my handful of buddies that, got me here. And I'm like, but those buddies have limited sort of resources. So like, great. You got them into a couple of deals in the beginning, but it's not going to get you where you're trying to go.
You mean buddies as in non-accredited? Do you mean
buddies as in non-accredited, right? Because they become buddies. They let the non-accredited investors agree they can, but it's just, I'm like, I get it, but it's just.
Nah, you can do parallel offerings. It's an excuse that people haven't figured out the solution to, right? I mean, it's just as simple as that. Yeah. So you can always navigate that kind of issue. It's not a big deal, but it's a barrier because people do see it as an issue.
They do, yeah.
So Verivest, and I was going to say, where do you see Verivest in 5 years? But that's a very long time from now, right? Where do you see? So I'm going to rephrase the question. Where do you see Verivest in the future? Where are you headed? Where do you want to get? Where's its maturity?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, the maturity is that, it's real estate only, right? It's going to be, it's commercial real estate. It's sub-institutional, right? It's all about this high net worth, family office type of capital with, sponsors who've embraced what we've just talked about. Right. And so that's really the future. What that looks like, right, is that you basically come into the Verivest website and you push some buttons to basically get everything you need done. Like that's why I call it the operating system. It's just, if you're a deal sponsor, it's just all done through the application. And, that's really where we're at. That's really what we're doing. In fact, for some of the stuff, the feedback and talk with you and other guys like you, it's just building a more robust, even set of fundraising tools. Right. So just that whole process, giving people more powerful tools so that they can put it in the hands and engage people like yourself to help them, do the digital marketing stuff. Right. So we just see it as you come to Verivest, with 10 investors, you're going to try to get to where it's 50, 100, 150, 200, plus investors. You keep adding that base, doing bigger deals and it's turnkey, one vendor.
Let me ask you three sign-off questions, 3 rapid-fire sign-off questions. I ask everybody 3 questions. First question, Lance, what are the key daily habits that you have to be successful?
Yeah, wake up early. That's the number one thing. Yeah.
What time do you get up?
4:50.
Oh, you have a nice lie-in then. I see.
4:50.
And then a gallon or 2 of coffee.
No, I drink one cup of coffee, whatever fits in this. Okay. I'm working on it. So that's it. That's my coffee.
Second question, what has been the hardest lesson you've learned in real estate? Let's stay focused on real estate.
Wow, hardest lesson learned in real estate. Man, I'm not. There's so much. I think it's the thing we preach, right? It's just like, be careful with who you do business with, right? Like, it's just like, that's the thing. It's all relationships. You get ahead of yourself and start doing deals with people that glitz and glamour. It's not sustainable. It's like, you got to build relationships with people. Not everyone's for everyone. So that's when we've got burned the most, as we sort of get a little excited about, the novelty of something or whatever. And those are the deals that usually go sideways. And we saw the warning signs and we ignored them because we got excited.
Emotion. You let emotion instead of logic get in the way. Last question. What is the most important thing someone who is thinking about investing in commercial real estate for the first time with a sponsor as an LP, what advice would you give to them the first time?
The first time ever, or the first time with a sponsor?
Yeah, the first time, with a sponsor, when they're out there looking for a deal and they've discovered, I like the word crowdfunding. They've discovered crowdfunding, see a bunch of deals on your site, here, there, whatever. What should they keep in mind, number one?
I think the number one thing is really try to understand what the conviction is of that sponsor, right? Like the good ones, there's like a method to their madness that goes beyond the surface, right? So if you're going to make your first investment, you might as well invest more time in looking for someone who's really got deep conviction about what they do and why they do it. And, and just keep this, it's the 5 whys, right? Like just keep drilling in, and obviously if they get annoyed with you and don't want to do it, then you sort of, you've answered your question, right? But I think that that's the piece that a lot of people sort of skip over, is they just don't dig deep enough to really understand how they do what they do. Because if you're a first-time investor, especially the sponsor, that's a lot of times what makes or breaks whether or not they're going to really, achieve, execute their business plan. So I'd really do that. And then the team members, right? Like, how do they do that then? Whatever they say and the conviction, and we do this, that, and the other thing, then it's like, yeah, but who does that part, and who does that part, and who does that part? And if it's like, I do it all, or, or it's there's sort of a hole in that and there isn't a human to back it up, I just move on to the next. I mean, that's sort of the philosophy we use on our private equity real estate shop, is that's what we look for. Like, we look for deep conviction, this team that's sort of this unique skill set that fits together. And so all the stuff I talk about, all this like sponsor level and all this analytical stuff, at the end of the day, it still comes down to like, can they do what they say they're doing, right? Like, so not to lose sight of that,
Fascinating. I love that idea of deep conviction. Lance Peterson. Am I pronouncing your last name correctly?
Yep, Lance Peterson, you got it.
Lance Peterson. And your title at Verivest? Founder, owner,
so I'm the
CEO, chairman, vice chairman?
Yeah. Founder and a managing partner.
Founder and managing partner at Verivest. Super pleasure to have you on my podcast. It's long overdue. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Adam. Take care.
That was Lance Peterson, managing partner at Verivest, one of the true industry leaders in the real estate crowdfunding world, filling an important gap as the industry grows ever larger. Be sure to go to gowercrowd.com and sign up for our newsletter. It's the only resource of its kind that focuses exclusively on the real estate crowdfunding industry. It's priced right, it's totally free, it covers all the latest news, updates, and information that you could want on the industry, all there at gowercrowd.com. Thanks for joining me today, Lance Peterson, managing partner at Verivest, and thank you for listening in. That's it for today. Be well, stay safe, and for now, this is Adam Gower signing off.